Felina knew the moment the train began to slow that something was wrong. The rhythm beneath her feet, steady and familiar for days, shifted into a grinding hesitation. Outside her window stretched miles of empty land, sun-bleached and unforgiving, the kind of place maps pretended didn't exist. There were no signposts, no station lights, no reason for the train to stop, yet it did. Steam hissed sharply as the engine groaned to a halt beside a narrow wooden platform that looked as if it had been assembled in a hurry and forgotten just as quickly. A single post stood beside it, the paint cracked and nearly gone. No name, no destination. Murmurs rippled through the passenger car. Felina rose from her seat, gripping her carpetbag. She had paid good money for a ticket west, chasing distance more than opportunity. This was not part of the plan. The conductor moved down the aisle, jaw tight. All passengers in this car off the train. Confusion turned to protest. Off, someone demanded. This isn't a scheduled stop. Another shouted. Felina stepped forward. Sir, there must be a mistake. Where are we? The conductor avoided her eyes. You'll need to disembark, miss. Before she could argue, a uniformed guard appeared behind him. The message was clear. This wasn't a request. Moments later, Elena stood on the platform with 5 strangers, the heat pressing down as if the land itself resented their presence. The train doors slammed shut. Steam burst upward, and just like that, the train lurched forward and disappeared into the distance, taking certainty with it. Silence followed. Well, a man's voice drawled. That was rude. Elena turned. The speaker stood a few steps away, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark coat dusted from travel. His hat shadowed sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked less surprised than the rest, more irritated, maybe even wary. You don't seem concerned, Elena said. He shrugged. Concern won't bring the train back. She studied him briefly, before looking past the platform. A town crouched in the distance, small, worn, and stubborn. Buildings leaned into one another as if sharing secrets. A saloon, a general store, a water tower rusted by time. A man approached from the dirt road, older, his movements slow but deliberate. Name's Walter Boone, he said. Welcome to Broken Creek. Elena frowned. Broken Creek isn't on any map. Walter sighed. That's the problem. The man beside her stiffened. You expect us to believe the railroad just forgot a town? They didn't forget, Walter said quietly. They're cutting us loose. Elena felt a chill despite the heat. Why force us off the train? Walter met her gaze. Because if passengers stop seeing Broken Creek, the railroad can say no one needs it. The other man stepped forward. Name's Tristan, he said. And what happens to the people who live here? Walter's voice softened. We fight to stay, or we disappear. Elena looked back at the empty tracks, her chest tightening. She had boarded that train to leave her past behind. Now fate had dropped her somewhere unfinished, unresolved. Tristan followed her gaze. Looks like we're stranded. For now, she said firmly. But as the wind swept through Broken Creek, carrying dust and determination in equal measure, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this place might not be an accident at all. Morning came slowly to Broken Creek, as if the sun itself was unsure whether the town deserved its light. Elena stepped out of the boarding house just after dawn. The building creaked beneath her boots, the wood tired but stubborn. She inhaled the dry air and studied the street stretching before her. It was quieter than any place she'd known. No passing wagons, no train whistle, no hurry. Just the scrape of a broom against a porch and the dull clang of metal striking metal somewhere down the road. The town was awake, but barely. Tristan stood near the hitching post, outside the saloon, tightening a strap on a borrowed saddle. He looked like he belonged here more than he had any right to. Sleeves rolled up, movements efficient and calm. You always rise this early? Elena asked, approaching. Habit, he replied. Hard to break. She nodded, glancing toward the tracks in the distance. Any idea when the next train comes? Walter says one might pass through tomorrow, Tristan said. might not stop. That word settled heavily between them. Before Elena could respond, a bell rang from the center of town. Walter Boone stood outside the town hall, calling for attention. Residents emerged, slowly shopkeepers, laborers, families worn thin by time and worry. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The railroad inspector arrives soon, Walter announced. If he decides Broken Creek isn't worth the stop, they'll tear up the platform by week's end. A murmur rippled through the room. Elena raised her hand. What can be done? Walter hesitated, then gestured around the hall. We show him we're still alive. And just like that, Elena found herself drafted into a fight she hadn't planned. She spent the morning helping repair the schoolhouse roof, alongside a woman named Margaret, whose hands were rough but gentle. We had 30 children once, Margaret said quietly. Now we have 6. But I still sweep every day. Elena swallowed. Why? Margaret smiled faintly. Because giving up is louder than hope. By midday, sweat soaked Elena's collar. But something unfamiliar stirred in her chest, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Across town, Tristan worked with the blacksmith, lifting beams and reinforcing the forge. His strength drew curious glances, but it was his willingness to stay that earned trust. Railroad man, huh? The blacksmith asked. Was, Tristan replied, trying to be something better. As the sun dipped west, Broken Creek looked different. Not thriving, but trying. Doors stood open. Laughter flickered briefly. Life pushed back. Elena found Tristan near the well at dusk. Dust on his hands, exhaustion in his posture. You could leave, she said. Find a horse, walk east. So could you? She met his gaze. Why don't you? Tristan leaned against the well. Because running's easy. Staying, that's the hard part. The truth of it struck her deeper than she expected. That night, Elena lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of Broken Creek. She had boarded the train to escape uncertainty. Yet here she was, surrounded by a tand, oddly unwilling to leave. Some places asked nothing of you. Others dared you to stay. Broken Creek was doing the latter. The sky darkened without warning. By late afternoon, clouds rolled over Broken Creek like a closing fist, heavy and low. The wind picked up, carrying grit and the scent of rain. Elena stood outside the general store when the first thunderclap split the air, sharp and sudden enough to make her flinch. This isn't good, someone muttered nearby. Rain came hard and fast, pounding rooftops and streets alike. Within minutes, water surged through the dirt road, turning dust into thick mud. Shouts echoed from the edge of town. The creek's rising. Elena ran toward the sound, skirts gathered in her hands. The usually shallow creek at the town's edge had transformed into a rushing, angry current, slamming against its banks. Tristan was already there. He waded knee-deep into the water, hauling sandbags with Walter and 2 other men. His jaw was set, movements fast but controlled. If this breaks through, he shouted, we lose the lower houses. Elena didn't hesitate. She grabbed a sack, ignoring the sting in her palms, as she dragged it into place. The rain soaked her through, hair plastered to her face, but she kept moving. Everyone did. Broken Creek fought back. For hours, the storm tested them, water clawing at the town, wind tearing at structures already worn thin. But the line held. When the rain finally eased, the creek receded just enough to spare the homes along its edge. The town stood. Barely, but it stood. Exhaustion settled over everyone like a second storm. Lanterns flickered to life as night fell, their warm glow defiant against the dark. Inside the saloon, townspeople gathered in quiet relief. Someone poured coffee, someone else passed out dry blankets. No music played, but something stronger filled the room, a shared understanding that they had survived together. Elena sat near the fire, hands wrapped around a tin cup. Her muscles ached. Her clothes were still damp, yet she felt more alive than she had in months. Tristan took a seat beside her. You didn't have to help, he said. She looked at him. Neither did you. He smiled faintly, then stared into the fire. Guess we both know what it's like to lose something. The words lingered. After a moment, Elena spoke. I left home because I was afraid of staying, she admitted. Everything there reminded me of what I'd planned and lost. Tristan nodded slowly. I stayed on the railroad longer than I should have. Watched towns die because it was easier than questioning orders. She turned to him, surprised by the honesty. I helped build the kind of progress that leaves people behind, he continued. That's why I got off that train. Not just because they forced me. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with truth. You think Broken Creek has a chance? Elena asked. Tristan glanced around the saloon. After tonight, yes. But wanting something to survive isn't enough. Someone has to choose it. Elena followed his gaze, seeing the townspeople laughing softly, repairing what they could, refusing to mourn something not yet gone. For the first time since boarding the train, Elena wondered if her journey hadn't been about leaving at all. Outside, the storm clouds drifted apart, revealing stars sharp and bright. And in that fragile calm, Broken Creek revealed something else. 2. What happened when people stopped running? The railroad inspector arrived just after noon. He came on horseback, coat crisp, boots polished, clean of dust that clung to everyone else in Broken Creek. His presence alone shifted the airbags, straightened. Voices lowered, hope tightened into something fragile. Elena stood beside Walter Boone near the town hall as the inspector dismounted. He glanced around with a practiced eye, already measuring what could be erased. Inspector Caldwell, Walter said, extending a hand. We're grateful you came. Caldwell nodded once, barely touching Walter's hand before turning his attention to the street. Let's make this quick. He walked the town slowly, clipboard scratching notes as he went. The leaning storefronts, the patched roofs, the worn faces of people who refused to look away. This town doesn't generate enough traffic, Caldwell said flatly. No reason for the railroad to stop. Elena stepped forward before she could stop herself. You didn't stop to ask why. Caldwell raised a brow. And why would that matter? Because Broken Creek was cut off, she said. Not abandoned, there's water here. Trade routes. People who work. Work doesn't equal profit, he replied. Before Elena could respond, Tristan joined them, dust on his sleeves, confidence in his stance. You rerouted the line, Tristan said. Of course, traffic dropped. You starved the town, then blamed it for being hungry. Caldwell's jaw tightened. Careful. Tristan didn't flinch. I helped build those lines. I know how this works. The inspector studied him more closely now. Your railroad, was Tristan corrected. Walter cleared his throat. We've repaired the schoolhouse, reinforced the forge, secured the creek after the storm. Broken Creek isn't dying, it's been denied. Caldwell said nothing, but his pen paused. That night, the town waited. Elena stood near the tracks, the rails glowing faintly under the moonlight. Tomorrow, a train would pass. It might stop, or it might never slow again. Tristan joined her, hands in his pockets. If the train stops, he said quietly, will you get on? She hesitated. I thought I wanted to keep moving, she admitted. But every time I imagine leaving, it feels wrong. He smiled softly. Funny thing about places like this. They don't ask you to stay. They let you decide. She looked up at him. And you? I've been leaving my whole life, Tristan said. This is the first place that's made me wonder what happens if I don't. The sound of a distant whistle carried through the night, faint, but unmistakable. Elena's breath caught. The train approached at dawn, steam rising like a question mark against the sky. Townspeople gathered near the platform, silent, tense. As the engine slowed, all eyes turned to Inspector Caldwell. The train screeched, then stopped. Caldwell stepped forward, clipboard tucked under his arm. Broken Creek remains a stop, he announced. For now, a cheer erupted, raw and disbelieving. Elena laughed through tears, gripping Tristan's arm. As passengers disembarked and boarded, Elena realized something with startling clarity. The train could take her anywhere, but for the first time, leaving felt like the wrong direction. The train stayed longer than anyone expected. Its engine hissed softly at the platform, iron and steam resting instead of rushing onward. Passengers moved through broken creaks and boarding, some stepping off with curiosity in their eyes. For the first time in years, the town felt visible. Felina stood near the edge of the platform, her carpet bag at her feet. She hadn't opened it since the inspector's decision. Now, she wasn't sure why she brought it at all. Tristan leaned against the railing beside her. "Last chance," he said gently. "No one would blame you." She smiled, watching a family reunite near the general store. "I spent so long believing movement meant progress," she replied. "Turns out, staying can be braver." The conductor called out final boarding. Elena didn't move. The train pulled away slowly, wheels clattering over the rails, the sound fading into the open land beyond Broken Creek. Dust rose, then settled. Silence returned, but this time it felt earned. Applause broke out. Laughter followed. Walter Boone removed his hat, eyes shining as he looked over the crowd. "We're still here," he said simply. Broken Creek breathed again. Days passed, then weeks. Life returned in small but meaningful ways. A delivery wagon arrived. A new teacher stepped off the train. The saloon reopened its doors, not as an escape, but as a gathering place. Felina found herself teaching reading in the schoolhouse alongside Margaret, her voice steady where it once trembled. She discovered that grief didn't vanish when you stopped. Running it softened when shared. Tristan took on repair work along the tracks, this time with purpose instead of orders. He spoke with the railroad men, not as a cog in the machine, but as someone who understood the cost of progress without care. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted Broken Creek gold, Elena and Tristan walked along the edge of town, where the creek now ran calm and clear. "I used to think my story ended the day I boarded that train," Elena said. "Like everything before, it was the only thing that mattered." Tristan stopped, turning to her. "Stories don't end," he said. "They change direction." She reached for his hand, fingers intertwining with his. "I don't want to leave." He squeezed her hand. "Then don't." They stood there as the stars emerged, one by one, the rails gleaming quietly in the distance, not a symbol of escape anymore, but of connection. Broken Creek wasn't forgotten, and neither were they. Sometimes the most important destinations weren't planned. Sometimes they weren't on any map at all. They were the places that forced you to stop and then taught you why staying mattered. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.